Cold Case, An Angelica Dale Mystery by P.K. Armstrong. Chapter 9. I decided to return to the house for my mid-morning cup of coffee and to use my brand new board to lay out my case. The Roland's neighborhood was mostly quiet, except for a few grandchildren in strollers or riding bicycles on the sidewalk. Most of the inhabitants had lived in the area for 20 years or more, so their children were grown and probably out working during the day. But the beautiful, well-tended lawns and tall trees created a peaceful atmosphere. Sandy and Chuck had given me the code to the keypad so I could come and go as I please. I grabbed the box from my car and entered the empty house. I placed the box in the alcove and returned to the kitchen to make fresh coffee. I warmed up a couple of leftover rolls from last night's dinner, and to the tray I added butter, honey, and some fruit. I put them all on the desk next to the box and started taking items out one by one. Since so far I only had what was given to me by Mr. Winters, I ordered my board in the same manner of the museum's exhibit. Using the simple magnets, I hung the diagram of the street leading up to and the outside of the club in the top left-hand corner of the board. Opening up the folder, I got my first look at the victims. It wasn't surprising they were all young. The whole club scene pales after the age of 30 for most people. The first picture was of a beautiful blonde girl, Bailey Rogers, 21, a server at the club. She was a nursing student at a local community college who went to school full-time during the day and worked evenings at Aspen Club. She had worked there for approximately 6 months. She left behind a mother, Susanna Rogers, and a younger sister, Avery. The next picture was of a tatted and pierced young man named Corey Rowe, 27, who looked like and was reported to be a drummer. He was actually the bartender. Corey was survived by his father. According to a small bio, he turned to music after early years spent in fights and petty crimes. At the time of his death, he was saving his money to go on some type of grand tour. I placed the two photos on the board, a few inches on the outside of the diagram, leaving space. I stared at them a moment, ate a piece of fruit, and reached for the next picture. Obviously a photo taken while she was working, Sasha Johnson was 23 and the hostess at the club. She was a cute girl, but I wondered at her outfit in the picture. Her makeup was minimal, and instead of a typical sexy outfit you might expect from a nightclub hostess, Sasha wore a white shirt with a scarlet vest and little bow tie. She wasn't smiling and wasn't trying to hide her displeasure that her photo was being taken. I looked at the photos I had pinned to the board and took a quick glance at the next one and realized that Sasha's photo was the only one that was from work. Was this because she had no family? I looked at the spreadsheet and noted that she had a niece. I placed the final photo up in the center of the group because here was the reason I was investigating in the first place. Derek Sampson, owner of the Aspen Club, and Stormie Gyles' boyfriend. His photo looked like a promo ad. His dark hair, which he wore long, green piercing eyes, and a chiseled jaw. He had one ear pierced and was holding up a drink, with each of his fingers extravagantly sporting a ring. I had done a little background on Derek before my trip north. Derek Sampson came from an upper-class family, but sadly he was an only child, as his parents died in a plane crash when he was 17. Instead of going into care for a year, he petitioned the courts to be emancipated and took his parents' insurance money and traveled. From what I could tell, he worked odd jobs from fry cook to an underwater welder on an oil tanker, basically gaining life experience. He returned to the area in the 80s, establishing himself in business. The Aspen Club was his first venture. I sat down to finish my snack and stared at the board. It was such a loss of life. Not even one person survived the fire. I closed my eyes and allowed the quiet of the house to settle over me. I could hear a leaf blower a few doors down, a dog barking, and the clock that Sandy had placed in the room ticking away. I opened my eyes again and looked at the faces staring back at me. I looked into the box to see if there was more personal information about the victims. Fires were usually started for basic reasons: pyromaniacs for the joy of watching it burn, people with a hero complex, notoriously, these are actually first responders, individuals who are covering up a crime, or finally, business owners with a financial motive. I didn't know enough to connect a motive to the victims. Derek Sampson, as club owner, could have had a financial motive. I remembered from the news articles that Derek was never really described as a successful businessman, and that could be a line of inquiry. But the club was new. He hadn't had time to make a success of it. Looking at the other faces, I wondered what kind of motive could exist for such young people. Were they even old enough to have enemies? I reached into the box and took out a diagram of the club. I tapped the table, deep in thought. I wondered if there were still any crime scene photos in existence. Knowing where they died in the club could help tell a story. I pinned the diagram to the board and noted the proverbial holes between the parts. I needed connections. I think it was time to interview Stormie Gyles.